Girl defends elderly couple from bullies. The next day, a millionaire sends them a luxury car, unveiling a connection that neither expected. On a sunny spring morning in Portland, the vibrant colors of blooming flowers danced in the gentle breeze. Alara, an 18-year-old art student, strolled through the park, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. She loved this time of year. The warmth of the sun on her skin and the laughter of children playing nearby filled her with joy. But today, that joy would soon be overshadowed by a scene she could never have expected. As she walked past a cluster of trees, Alara's gaze fell upon a familiar sight. Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove, the elderly couple who lived down the street. They were sitting on a bench, a small shared smile on their faces, reminiscent of the love they had nurtured over the years. Suddenly, a loud group of teenagers burst into the scene, their laughter sharp and cruel. "Look at those old geezers," one of the boys shouted, his voice dripping with mockery. The others joined in, their jeers echoing through the park. Alara's heart sank as she watched the couple's smiles fade, replaced by expressions of confusion and hurt. "Why don't you go back to your nursing home?" Another girl taunted, her words cutting deep. Alara felt a knot form in her stomach. She had always admired the Hargroves' resilience and kindness. How could anyone treat them this way? In that moment, disbelief settled in her chest. She could feel her heart racing, the pulse quickening in her ears. Fear gripped her. What if the bullies turned on her next? But as she looked at Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove, their dignity stripped away by the harshness of youth, something within her stirred. She remembered the countless times she had dreamed of standing up for justice for those who could not defend themselves. Before she fully realized what she was doing, Alara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor of her hands. "Hey, leave them alone!" The words came out with unexpected strength, and for a brief moment, the bullies paused, their laughter fading into silence. One of the boys sneered, "What are you gonna do about it, art girl?" Alara felt a fire ignite inside her. "You think this is funny? They deserve your respect, just like everyone else." The air thickened with tension, and Alara braced herself for a confrontation. The teenagers exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. She could see the surprise on their faces as they processed her words, and for an instant, doubt crept in. What if they turned aggressive? But she pressed on. "You may think you're tough, but bullying isn't strength. It's weakness. You're just hiding behind your numbers." The bully who had first spoken scoffed, yet there was a slight hesitation in his stance. "Whatever," he muttered, motioning for his friends to follow. With a final glance at the Hargroves, Alara felt a rush of relief as the group turned and walked away, laughter replaced by sullen murmurs. She rushed to the couple, her heart still pounding. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. Mr. Hargrove looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, dear," he said, his voice shaky but warm. "It's been a long time since anyone stood up for us." Mrs. Hargrove nodded, her voice soft yet strong. "You showed great courage today. Not many would have done what you did." Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest, but as she smiled back at them, a wave of anxiety washed over her. What would happen next? Had she made things worse? The thrill of bravery mingled with fear, and as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment might change everything. What would she do if the bullies returned? Would her act of courage put her in danger? As the sun shone brightly overhead, Alara grappled with her thoughts, knowing that this was just the beginning of a much larger struggle. After the bullies had run off, Alara stood in the park, her heart still racing. A mixture of triumph and anxiety washed over her. The thrill of standing up for the Hargroves filled her with pride, but deep down, she felt a cold grip of fear. "What if they come back?" she whispered to herself, looking around to see if anyone was watching. That night, Alara tossed and turned in her bed. Shadows danced on her walls as the moonlight crept in through the window. Her dreams turned dark, filled with images of the bullies lurking in the corners of her mind. "They will come for you," a voice echoed in her dream, sending shivers down her spine. She woke up, gasping for breath, her heart pounding. I should have just walked away, she thought, burying her face in her hands. As dawn broke, she sat on the edge of her bed, feeling drained. Memories of her childhood came flooding back. She recalled her parents, their warm smiles and gentle voices. Elara, her mother used to say, always show kindness to others. It is what makes us human. Her father would nod in agreement. Standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves is a true mark of bravery. Those lessons had shaped her, but now they also weighed heavily on her heart. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut, Elara murmured, her reflection staring back at her in the mirror, filled with doubt. The next day at school, whispers filled the air. Elara walked through the hall, her head down, trying to avoid eye contact. Then, a classmate approached her. Hey, did you hear? One of the bullies said he is going to get you back for what you did. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. What? Why would they do that? She stammered, a knot tightening in her stomach. Everyone is talking about it. They think you went too far, the classmate replied, concern in their voice. You need to be careful. Elara nodded, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. Thanks for telling me, she managed to say, but inside, she felt helpless. In her art class, the usual chatter felt distant. As she painted, her brush strokes were heavy with the tension she felt. Her friend, Lena, noticed her silence. Elara, what's wrong? You seem off today, she asked, peering over at the canvas. I'm just worried, Elara admitted, setting down her brush. I stood up for the Hargroves, but now I feel like I've put myself in danger. Lena frowned, her brow furrowing. You did the right thing. Those bullies were wrong. You can't let their threats scare you. You have to be brave. But what if they come after me? Elara replied, her voice trembling. What if I'm not strong enough to face them? Strength isn't just about being tough. It's about standing up for what is right, even when it's scary, Lena said, her eyes filled with encouragement. You inspired so many people. Don't let fear take that away from you. Elara nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe Lena was right, but as the day went on, unease settled in her chest like a heavy stone. The shadows of doubt crept in again, reminding her of the threats. What if I lose everything? She thought, biting her lip. Later that evening, Elara sat at her desk, staring at her phone. She hesitated before typing a message to her parents. Can we talk? I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. She hit send, hoping they would understand. As she waited, the silence of her room felt deafening. Moments later, her phone buzzed. Of course, honey, we're here for you. Just remember, courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you act despite the fear, her mother replied. Elara sighed, feeling a warmth spread through her. They always know what to say, she thought, comforted by their words. But the fear remained, nagging at her mind as she prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. The sun shone brightly on the streets of Portland as Elara walked home, her mind still swirling with thoughts about the surprise gift she had just received. A luxurious car, a gesture of gratitude for her brave act. It was hard for her to process. She had never expected such recognition. As she turned the corner, she spotted the Hargroves sitting on their porch. Their kind faces lit up when they saw her. Elara, Mrs. Hargrove called out, her voice warm and inviting. Come join us. Elara approached, her heart fluttering with a mix of joy and uncertainty. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove, she said, managing a smile. Thank you for everything. Mr. Hargrove, his hair silver and his posture a bit stooped, chuckled softly. You deserve this honor, dear. What you did was brave. We are proud of you. Proud? Elara echoed, her voice barely a whisper. But it's just a car. Mrs. Hargrove shook her head, her eyes sparkling with wisdom. It's not just a car, Elara. It's a symbol of your courage. It shows that there are still good people in this world. Elara felt a warmth spread through her chest, but also a knot of discomfort. I don't want people to think I did it for recognition. I just wanted to help. Mr. Hargrove leaned forward, his expression serious. That's the difference between a true hero and someone who seeks fame. You acted from your heart. That's what matters. Ilara looked away, her thoughts racing. She couldn't shake off the feeling that she was now under a spotlight, and the pressure of expectations weighed heavily on her. What if people misinterpret my actions? She asked. What if they think I'm just seeking attention? Mrs. Hargrove reached out and placed her hand on Ilara's. You cannot control how others perceive you. What you can control is your intention. Keep your heart true, and that will guide you. Ilara nodded slowly, feeling the warmth of their support. Yet, the thought of being misunderstood gnawed at her. But what does it mean to be a hero anyway? I just stood up for someone. It feels like a small act compared to what others have faced. Mr. Hargrove smiled gently. Every act of kindness counts, Ilara. Remember, bravery comes in many forms. It's not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's simply standing up when it's easier to stay quiet. Ilara took a deep breath, trying to absorb their words. She thought about her own upbringing, the values her parents had instilled in her. I guess I was raised to believe in helping others, but it feels different when you're in the moment. Of course it does, Mrs. Hargrove replied. Courage is often accompanied by fear. It's how you handle that fear that defines you. As they talked, Ilara felt her heart begin to settle. The Hargroves shared their own stories of resilience, tales of how they had faced challenges and overcame them. You know, Mr. Hargrove said, when we were younger, we faced our share of difficulties, but we learned that kindness can transcend age and circumstance. Ilara listened intently, realizing that their experiences echoed her own feelings of doubt and anxiety. It's inspiring to hear that, she said. Sometimes I feel so lost in what I should do next. Mrs. Hargrove smiled knowingly. You're not alone in that, dear. Everyone feels lost at times. The key is to find your path and stick to it, driven by compassion. With each passing moment, Ilara's discomfort began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. Maybe I can use this recognition to do something good, she suggested, her voice growing stronger. I could organize an event to bring awareness to the plight of the elderly and encourage others to stand up against bullying. Mr. Hargrove's eyes lit up. Now that's a wonderful idea. You have the power to inspire change, Ilara. Use it wisely. Feeling a renewed sense of determination, Ilara smiled brightly. Thank you for believing in me. I really want to make a difference. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow around them, Ilara realized that this journey was just beginning. With the Hargroves by her side, she felt ready to embrace the challenges ahead, knowing that true heroism was rooted in kindness, humility, and the courage to act. Ilara sat at her desk, staring blankly at her sketchbook. The sunlight streamed through her window, but she felt a heaviness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. After her act of courage, she had become the talk of the town. Everyone seemed to expect something from her now, and the pressure felt like a weight she could not shake off. Hey, Ilara, can I see your latest drawing? Her friend Mia asked, peeking over her shoulder. Mia's bright smile contrasted sharply with Ilara's mood. Sure, Ilara replied, forcing a smile as she turned the page. But as she showed Mia her work, she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. I've been trying to draw more, but it's hard to focus with everything going on. Mia nodded, sensing Ilara's discomfort. You've become a hero, you know? Everyone admires you. It's amazing. Is it? Ilara questioned, her voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve it. I just did what anyone else should have done. Mia frowned, tilting her head. But you did it. You stood up when others wouldn't. That takes courage. Ilara sighed, looking out the window. I keep thinking about what happens next. What if I can't live up to everyone's expectations? Later that day, Ilara met with Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove at their cozy home. The couple welcomed her with warm smiles, their eyes shining with gratitude. Ilara felt a rush of relief as their kindness enveloped her. "Thank you for coming, dear," Mrs. Hargrove said, her voice gentle. "We wanted to talk to you about how you're feeling." "I feel overwhelmed," Alara admitted, her voice trembling. "Everyone thinks I'm some kind of hero, but I just did what felt right. Now, I'm not sure if I can handle it." Mr. Hargrove leaned forward, his eyes wise and understanding. "Alara, true heroism is not about the recognition, it's about the intent behind your actions. You acted out of compassion, and that is what matters." "But what if I fail?" Alara asked, her voice cracking. "What if I can't keep helping others?" Mrs. Hargrove took Alara's hands in hers. "You won't be alone. We believe in you. Courage is not a single moment, it's a journey. Embrace it, but remember to be humble." Alara felt a wave of warmth at their words. "I don't want to let you down," she said softly. "You won't," Mr. Hargrove assured her. "Use this platform to advocate for those who need a voice. You can inspire others, just as you inspired us." The thought of using her recognition for a greater purpose began to take root in Alara's mind. "Maybe I could organize an event," she suggested, excitement creeping into her voice. "Something to raise awareness about the elderly, to show the community how important it is to respect and care for them." "That's a wonderful idea," Mrs. Hargrove exclaimed, clapping her hands. "You can bring people together and create a space for understanding." As Alara left the Hargroves' home, she felt lighter. The pressure of recognition was still there, but now it was mixed with a sense of purpose. She began to see her newfound status not as a burden, but as an opportunity to make a difference. Over the next few days, Alara worked tirelessly to plan the event. She reached out to her classmates and local businesses, gathering support from everyone around her. When she shared her idea, people responded with enthusiasm. "This is going to be great," Mia said as they went over the details one afternoon. "You're really going to make a difference, Alara." Alara smiled, feeling a spark of hope. "I just want to remind people that everyone deserves respect, no matter their age." As the day of the event approached, Alara's nerves returned. What if no one showed up? What if her message didn't resonate? But deep down, she knew that she had to try. She remembered the Hargroves' words about humility and intent. On the day of the event, the community gathered in the park. Alara stood at the front, her heart racing as she looked at the faces before her. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice steady. "Thank you all for being here today. We are here to honor our elders and to remind ourselves of the importance of empathy and respect." Alara's words flowed, and she felt a sense of connection with the crowd. As she spoke, she realized that this was where she belonged, fighting for those who needed a voice. In that moment, she understood that courage was not just about recognition, but about the impact one could have on the world. The day of the community event arrived, bright and full of promise. Alara stood at the entrance of the park, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. Colorful banners fluttered in the gentle spring breeze, and tables were set up with information about bullying and support for the elderly. She could see a diverse crowd gathering, people from various backgrounds, all united by a common goal: to create a safer and kinder community. As Alara took a deep breath, she spotted the Hargroves approaching. Mr. Hargrove, with his warm smile and twinkling eyes, waved at her. "Alara, this is wonderful," he exclaimed, looking around at the bustling atmosphere. Mrs. Hargrove nodded in agreement, her silver hair glistening in the sunlight. "We are so proud of you, dear. This event is going to make a difference." "Thank you both for supporting me," Alara replied, her voice slightly trembling. "I just hope everyone feels comfortable sharing their stories." "You've already done so much, Alara," Mrs. Hargrove reassured her. "Remember, every small step counts. It's about building bridges, not walls." As the event began, Alara took the stage, her heart pounding. She looked out at the crowd, their faces filled with curiosity and hope. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice steadying. "Today is about standing together against bullying and showing respect for everyone, especially the elderly. We all have a role to play." The audience responded with murmurs of agreement. Alara could see a few familiar faces, people she had met during her journey. They smiled encouragingly, and she felt a wave of support wash over her. After her speech, Alara invited attendees to share their stories. One by one, people stepped forward, their voices shaking but strong. A young woman spoke of her experience being bullied in school. "I felt alone and scared," she said, her eyes glistening. "But seeing Alara stand up for the Hargroves made me realize I am not alone. I can speak up too." The crowd erupted in applause, and Alara felt a swell of pride. Each story shared was a reminder of the power of courage and community. As the event continued, the Hargroves took to the stage, their presence commanding attention. Mr. Hargrove spoke first, his voice full of emotion. "As a couple, we faced many challenges. We have been bullied too, and it hurts. But we are here today to tell you that kindness can change everything. It can heal wounds that words can inflict." Mrs. Hargrove added, "We are not just victims, we are survivors. Your stories matter, and they can inspire change. Let's work together to create a world where everyone feels safe and respected." The audience listened intently, each word resonating deeply. Alara watched as people leaned forward, captivated by the couple's wisdom. She realized the impact of their words and how their experiences bridged the gap between generations. As the day unfolded, Alara moved through the crowd, speaking with attendees and listening to their stories. She felt a connection forming, a sense of unity that she had never experienced before. A group of teenagers approached her, their faces a mix of curiosity and hesitation. "Are you the one who stood up to the bullies?" one of them asked shyly. "Yes," Alara replied, her heart swelling with hope. "But it's not just about me. It's about all of us standing together." The teens nodded, understanding dawning on their faces. "We want to help too," another said. "We know we can do better." Alara felt a rush of joy. That's the spirit. Together we can make a difference. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Alara reflected on the day. The event had not only brought people together, it had sparked conversations about empathy, respect, and the need for change. She understood now that courage was more than a single act. It was a commitment to fostering a community where everyone felt valued. With the Hargroves by her side, Alara felt a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that the journey was just beginning, and with every bridge built, they were one step closer to a kinder world. The laughter, the tears, and the stories shared that day would echo in her heart, reminding her that true courage lies in the connections we create. As the spring sun warmed the streets of Portland, Alara stood at the center of a gathering that seemed to pulse with energy. It was not just any event, it was a celebration of kindness and respect, a movement she had helped spark. Banners hung from trees, each one adorned with messages like, "Stand up against bullying," and "Empathy is strength." The air was filled with laughter and chatter, a sound that felt both new and familiar to Alara. "Look at all these people," she exclaimed to Mrs. Hargrove, who stood beside her, a proud smile lighting up her face. "They are here because of you, dear," Mrs. Hargrove replied, her voice warm and encouraging. "Your courage has inspired so many. It is truly wonderful." Alara felt a swell of pride, but also a twinge of doubt. She had not done it alone. The Hargroves and many others had joined her cause, making this event possible. "I just wanted to help," she admitted, looking around at the crowd. "I never expected it to grow so big." "Sometimes, all it takes is one person to start a change," Mr. Hargrove chimed in, his voice steady. "And you, Alara, have done just that." As the event unfolded, Alara moved from group to group, engaging with attendees. She shared stories of her encounter with the bullies, emphasizing the importance of standing up for those who could not defend themselves. "We need to look out for each other," she told a young girl, who nodded earnestly. "I want to be brave like you," the girl said, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "You already are," Alara replied, bending down to meet her gaze. Bravery comes in many forms, even in kindness. Just being here today shows your courage. Throughout the day, people shared their own stories of being bullied or witnessing acts of discrimination. Each tale added a layer to the movement, weaving a tapestry of shared experiences and resilience. Alara listened intently, her heart swelling with empathy. She realized how vital these connections were. They made her feel less alone in her journey. At one point, Mrs. Hargrove gathered a small group around her. "When we face challenges, we often feel isolated," she began. "But it is essential to remember that we have a community. Together, we can lift each other up." Alara watched as the crowd nodded, their faces reflecting understanding. It was a moment of unity, one that she had longed for in her life. She stepped forward, feeling the weight of her role in this collective experience. "We are stronger together," she added, her voice steady. "Let's promise to support one another." As the event came to a close, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the park. Alara stood with the Hargroves, their hands intertwined, a symbol of the bond they had formed. "This is just the beginning," she said, her eyes shining with determination. "I want to do more. I want to use my art to spread our message." Mr. Hargrove nodded in approval. "Art has the power to inspire change. You can reach people in ways words alone cannot." Alara smiled, her heart racing with possibilities. "I want to create pieces that tell our stories, our struggles, and our victories. I want to show others that kindness is an act of courage." Mrs. Hargrove placed a comforting hand on Alara's shoulder. "Your vision is beautiful, dear. Never forget the impact you can make." As the last of the attendees began to leave, Alara took a moment to reflect. She realized that her act of courage had not only transformed her life, but had also sparked a movement that could bring hope and change to her community. The connection she felt with the Hargroves and everyone present filled her with a sense of belonging she had sought for so long. "Thank you for believing in me," Alara said softly to the Hargroves as they walked together toward the exit of the park. "Thank you for being you," Mr. Hargrove replied, his eyes twinkling with pride. "You have a bright future ahead, Alara. Go out and make it shine." With renewed purpose, Alara stepped into the evening, ready to embrace the next chapter of her life, knowing that her journey had just begun. Share this story if you believe that kindness and courage can create lasting change in our communities. Leave a comment about how standing up for someone has made a difference in your life, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Together, let's spread the message of empathy and support.